people are going to leave a bunch of stuff. So if you still, I mean, there's always a management, a store's not open without some sort of management person on duty. It might be just a supervisor, it could be assistant manager, but, so the pharmacy employees would be gone, but there would be still employing, just like you said, then they could also kind of monitor it, because I think otherwise, we're in the retail
I think there's a difference, because in a hospital, the DEA registrant is the hospital. In a retail pharmacy, the DEA registrant is the pharmacy. So I think there's a little bit of a distinction. So I would argue that that nurse manager in the hospital is the DEA registrant employee, which
But
is
I
what
guess
the law actually, the regs say.
But I guess then that goes back to what Laura's saying is, as far as our reg, is the registrant the pharmacy or the hospital?
The DEA determines the registrant. I don't think we do.
I think it's both. I think the registrant has to be both somehow affiliated with your license, the state board licensee, as well as the registrant. Now, the definition of employee, they did say it can be an agent, it can be an employee. I mean, they cross-referenced labor law that deals with basically the employment relationship. So that gives you more flexibility. Also, they included, so it could be a part-time person. That gave some flexibility. But I think the significance is it still has to be somebody that the pharmacy can say, this person can act on the pharmacy's behalf, maybe not in every respect, but in the ones that would affect public safety.
Right. And it doesn't matter that the store owner would not be an employee of the registrant, while in a hospital, that nurse would be an employee of the registrant. Does it matter? Because you said it could be an agent as well? Doesn't have to be an employee?
The definition of employee, I think specifically includes an agent.
In the DEA regulations?
Yeah, I'm looking just to see.
Well, I don't know if any of the old people are still here, if they're interested, I mean, if that would be of help, or if they want to lock it, but.
And the reason I kind of, because I know with Walgreens, when they've done theirs, they've done 24-hour stores only. So I'm just wondering if there's interest in that on the retail side.
Amy, excuse me, Amy. So what are the concerns we're worrying about here, Amy?
Pardon me, Victor?
What are the concerns we have right here, the issue?
Regarding the hospitals?
Regarding the hospital. I mean,
because if
so
we're putting in too many steps in place, it may preempt the hospitals from wanting to even do this, because the Board of Pharmacy requirements are so many. So if I'm a hospital, I got to go lock the bin before I leave, have to go open up the following morning, have to go making sure all of this is taken care of per our regulations. They may just say it's not worth it, or I have to have my eyes on it all the time. In a hospital, the pharmacies...
And they have the option of not to do it anyway, so there are only about, 600 hospitals, 400 hospitals across the whole state. So even if none of them want to participate, when you say have 6,000 retail pharmacies, they want to opt into it, what is the significance? And also, it's not they cannot do it. They still could do it, that you just open and lock it just like a retail pharmacy. I mean, the hospital employee, the pharmacist employee could just go and lock it and open it in the daytime when they're operating. Usually, hospital pharmacy operate at least from 9 to 10, if you close at night. If you're not a 24 hours pharmacy, you open most of the office hours anyway. So I just really don't see what's the biggest concern here.
So, Victor, are you suggesting that a retail pharmacy should be able to also not have to lock it?
No, I suggested the hospital would just like the retail pharmacy. When you operate in operating hours, you open it and then you lock it when you close. So
the hospitals don't close.
Hospitals. I think I found the section you're talking about, Laura, where it says the definition of authorized employee, The FDA codifies a definition of employee in harmony with the general common law of agency. Is that what you're referring to?
Yeah, I mean, it's section 1300.05, and it says, some of the factors relative, and this is right from the text of the regs themselves, not even the comments. Some of the factors relevant to the determination of employee status include the hiring party's right to control the manner and means by which the product is accomplished, the skill required, the source of the instrumentalities and tools, the location of the work, the duration of the relationship between the parties, whether the hiring party has the right to assign additional projects to the hired party, the extent of the hired party's discretion over when and how long to work, the method of payment, the hired party's role in hiring and paying assistants, whether the work is part of the regular business of the hiring party, whether the hiring party is in business, the provision of employee benefits, and the tax treatment of the hired party. And then it goes into some other, criteria, I think, that I read earlier. If the person is directly paid by the registrant, if the person is subject to direct oversight by the registrant, is required as a condition of employment to follow the registrant's procedures and guidelines pertaining to the handling of controlled substances, subject to receive a performance rating or performance evaluation on a regular or routine basis from the registrant, subject to disciplinary action by the registrant, and required to render services at the registrant's registered location. So they basically are not, you're not going to be able to define it perfectly in all situations. They left it very broad, and it's going to be a case by case.
Okay.
Not going to be a cookie cutter answer, I think, in that regard. And
Even for the situation that Debbie described with the retail pharmacies, they could have the store owner, the store manager that's on at night oversee the retail pharmacy. If they're the agent. Because they're not part of the registrant, the pharmacy is.
right, I think that's a bigger problem in a retail setting because of exactly what you said, who the registrant is. Is I don't want to use a name. The grocery store is not a registrant in any way, right?
Right. It's the pharmacy.
Pharmacy
But the
within it.
hospital, it is the hospital that's the registrant, and they've got a lot to lose if there's any issues, which the DA has come down on multiple hospitals already and issued multi-million-dollar fines.
But also they have people who understand.
Yeah.
Emphasizes in their comments is they felt comfortable allowing only hospitals with the pharmacies in it is because regulatory aspects and the security aspects that apply to controlled substances. And the analysis is these are people who know how to reasonably securely take care of these drugs.
So can we just change, instead of pharmacy employees, can we say registrant employees?
Are you talking about in C?
And
Talking about
define,
in subsection C?
yeah, and define registrant somewhere. We can say DEA registrant, which is, I think we do refine that all collectors have to be registrants, right? So we should have referenced that somewhere under the definition of collector.
That would be consistent with what the DEA already thought through. It makes sense.
Does it say registrants?
Why do we have to be involved in this question?
Hospital clinics with on-site distributors.
We need to hear you.
I'm sorry, I got so worked up. Who are registered with the DEA as collectors and licensed in good standing with the board may host a pharmaceutical take-back receptacle, so it's there.
Do we say hospital on there?
Well, they're a DEA registrant, right?
Yeah.
There it is. Only California licensed pharmacies, hospital clinics with on-site pharmacies, and drug distributors, licensed wholesalers and third-party logistics providers, principally because they're reverse distributing. They're picking up this, or accepting the stuff back, who are registered with the DEA as collectors and licensed in good standing.
So it's hospital/clinics.
It's the hospital/clinics with on-site pharmacies.
Okay.
It's a 5-word or 5-word noun every time they use it.
If we change that, Laura, do you think we'll be okay?
I think, although I think we talk about them being collectors, right? But I wonder,
We're all getting away from our mics, apparently.
well, I have too,
I don't know
too
whether
many
that's it.
resources there. So I was trying to just think about whether or not there's value to keeping the word pharmacy and maybe saying pharmacy or registrant employee, in order
Oh.
to,
That's a good idea.
Yeah, actually.
Fine. That's a really good idea.
Pharmacy or registrant.
Okay, that addresses the concerns you brought up. You guys are happy? Okay.
Wow, that was
You
easy.
guys kind of scared it out of us. You didn't have to say a word.
It was the glaring looks they were giving.
Okay.
Thank you.
So do we, if we make that change, we're going to have to open up for 15-day.
We're going to have to do it
a
anyway.
15-day notice
Okay.
anyhow. We haven't
Okay.
noticed any of this language because we needed the board's
All right.
approval.
Yeah, all of our staff changes, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, if you agree with them, yes.
Of course we do.
Oh, you get dinner tonight, Debbie.
Okay, are there any other
Sugar's on me.
board comments regarding changes to these regulations?
Oh, my.
A public comment.
Just to be
Sorry,
clear
Laura.
on that, I think we were talking about that in the context of, on page 5, but I'm pretty sure that term is going to
5Cs.
pop up everywhere, so
Well,
we'll take care of that.
Yeah, thank you.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Hi, I'm Megan Harwood.
She sat down and her mic was on. Now, how come she can do it and we can't?
I try. I'm a member of the Orange County Prescription Abuse Prevention Coalition, and I just wanted to maybe share, we had our bi-monthly meeting last week. Yeah, bi-monthly meeting last week. And we had a really great presentation from our president, Dr. Mika Hata, with some students from Western University. I brought some copies if the board is interested, but essentially what we did was they spoke to 60 different pharmacies in Orange County, Los Angeles County, and Riverside County. And it seemed staggering, about 68% of the pharmacies were not aware of the education of how to let a patient know of how to dispose the medication at home if they chose to do so. And that seems to be, I mean, I've been intimately involved with this quagmire of a problem for like the past 8 years, and I still feel we're kind of treading in place with the same regulations, trying to please, all the different counties and get everything lined up and standardized. So I appreciate everything the board's done, especially making it voluntary, because I think that was a huge concern of a lot of pharmacies. The diversion in terms of people from the outside coming in, and also, staff possibility, was a lot of what the pharmacists and the doctors at the meeting expressed. So we were just basically summarizing when we all were discussing it after the meeting that it seems that most pharmacists are of the opinion that they want to more educate the patients and keep the accountability with the patients, where they can do it at home and not move it from point A to point B. I'm not sure if that's relevant since you're having to do this rulemaking process. I'm not sure, how much you need to put in the regulations, but I just thought it might be worth it to consider that most of the pharmacists we spoke with and most of the patients who are at the meeting, we also have a lot of parents that come, were all seemingly in agreement that they would be able to and willing to, do the process at home with the unpalatable substance and the water in the bag, and then putting it into the garbage, not the toilet or flushing it, but into the garbage after that. I'm not sure of the difference between counties, but in Orange County we have the Orange County Recycling and Sanitation Department said that they have no environmental concerns as a result of that. There's not really, I guess because of the lined landfills there's not really much of a risk. And I'm just, speaking on my own behalf, just kind of hearing everything and how far we've come, and at the same time, we're still kind of stuck in this place where there's a lot of, confusion or, contradictions. Originally, it was between the DEA and the FDA, and now the different counties. So I'm just thinking, can we, in some way, emphasize the education component and have pharmacists get out there and maybe put it on the website or kind of do some kind of campaign where we encourage pharmacists to really get involved in educating patients how to destroy it themselves at home. Just, in addition to the disposal guidelines that you're in the process of.
That's our goal. Right now, we're just trying to get these regulations finalized so that we can have something to educate
Right.
pharmacists about.
So is for clarification purpose, is that still agreeable by the board that the mixture of the hot water with the substance that makes the medication rendered?
The board's position is that if a pharmacy would like to be participating in drug take-back, they may utilize, these are just guidance or regulations. If they are going to do it, this is how they're going to do it. The board is not taking a position on the method of that happening.
I see, okay. And it does vary county to county, right? Okay, yeah. So I do.
Thanks for your comments. We want to try to move on because we've got quite a.
Does it help at all if I just give you the
Sure,
handout I brought for you?
Give it to Laura and she'll
Laura can give it to us.
Okay, and then you can always write in the 15-day comment period you said for
Yes.
anything additional. Okay, great. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your comments and thanks for coming. Okay, any other public comment on these regulations?
Steve Gray from Kaiser Permanente. Real quickly, I can't remember, but do you define in this regulation at this time that the pharmacies that participate as a collector have to somehow notify the Board of Pharmacy that they're doing this? What do you call that?
Within 30 days of establishing
Okay. And what I was afraid of, you would call that registering, and then people would get...
No, we're not using the R word.
Okay. And then...
Just notify us.
And then, maybe Lauren knows this, when the skilled nursing facility has one of these bins, do they have to register with the DEA?
No. So it's the pharmacy or the hospital that has that authorizes that collection bin within the skilled nursing facility.
Okay.
So you can't have a collection receptacle in the skilled nursing facility unless the registrant authorizes it.
And oversees it.
And oversees it.
Okay.
And they can have, there's special rules that apply to a bin that's located in that
If
setting.
the skilled nursing facility pharmacy, which may be located 30 miles away from the skilled nursing facility, is the registrant, because as I understand it, the skilled nursing facility does not have to have a pharmacy on site, but they can have a relationship with a pharmacy. And if that has to be monitored by a registrant's employee,
That's one of the exceptions, and it's monitored specifically. They authorize the long-term care facility staff to do so.
okay. And then I just want to point out something we talked about at the Ledge Committee, is the current bill by Senator Jackson, 1229, says that one of the requirements for what it offers, which is the immunity, says that the collector has to ensure that public access to secure drug take-back bin is limited to hours in which the employees of the registered collector are present and able to monitor the operation of the secure drug take-back bin. So we know that may, if that is enacted, that may be a limitation, but as I understand it, it's only a limitation on whether you get immunity from civil and criminal liability.
I think it also just conforms to what the board just spent the last hour talking about, to make sure that we identify whose employees have to have permissive access. And the way that it's worded is you've got a pharmacy or registrant employee in the case it's a hospital.
But this says are present.
Yeah, but that was part of the issue, was
Okay.
whether or not you lock up the bin every night. And right now, our regs, I believe, are consistent with with the DEA requirements, and that's consistent with the DEA requirements. But you're right, the one thing that they would lose in that is the immunity if they chose not to do it that way.
Correct.
So if
Okay.
that was your point,
Right.
thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks, Steve. Hi, Mary. Hi, Angie.
Good afternoon. I'm Mary Staples with the National Association of Chain Drugstores. Just want to briefly share with you some of our members' concerns of the inconsistencies for retail pharmacies with the DEA regulations.
Da-da-da.
Be quick, it's late in the afternoon.
Angie Minetti with the California Retailers Association. First, actually wanted to start and say that the draft that was released a couple days ago or last week, we definitely, our association is supportive. Our members are supportive of the direction. I think, just wanted to raise a couple technical comments that we noticed in the proposed regulations that I think lack consistency with the DA regs. Just a couple minor areas. First point, signage. Notice that Schedule 5 was omitted from that, so wanted to kind of see if there was any purpose or intent behind that, or if the board would be open to including Schedule 5 on that.
I think we actually already addressed that, and we're going to add Schedule 5
got
on
it.
page
Okay.
2, and I think it was
Right,
on
you had talked
page-
about that when Angie was out of the room, but you didn't address the sharps part of that that's in that
Okay.
section.
And then there's also contact information from the pharmacies. I mean, obviously, since many of us can't see into the future, we don't really know as far as what to expect for our members that would like to comply with this on a nationwide platform. And I think we want to ensure that any signage or any kind of requirements to comply can be done in other states as well. And so I noticed that the signage does include contact information for the pharmacy or for the registrant as well. And as our folks, some of our members may have multiple locations, that signage can't be cranked out in sort of a uniform fashion. So the DA regs don't include that information in the signage as well, or they don't require that
Angie,
information.
you're referring to E, where it says the collection receptacle shall contain signage that includes, number 1, the name and phone number of the collector pharmacy? Is
Yes.
that?
I mean,
so
with-
you want that to be struck, or what do you want?
Yes, just because, even as far as the name and phone number of the collector pharmacy, means that the location, and typically we envision these signs to be something that's sort of uniform, cranked out, something that can be done in multiple states. And so if you have store-specific information included on that, obviously, there would be a little bit more cost involved in manufacturing those store-specific signs.
And you're saying that that's not, when you look at the DEA reg, that's not in there?
I don't believe they're included in the DA regs.
It's not, but for that, if a consumer goes to the bin, for example, and sees it overflowing, they could readily call in the event it's not directly linked to that pharmacy, particularly in a hospital. Put an index card. I mean, I was envisioning something simple as an index card that you could put on that wouldn't have to be a sign, and that's why we didn't design the signs. We're leaving it up to you
Oh,
to
I
design
see.
the signs and figure out how you're going to put this on there. We just want the message to be consistent. But if you have a collection bin, I would think you'd want to know who's responsible for it.
Maybe include it, so maybe.
You would.
Maybe the pharmacy information included somewhere on the receptacle then? I mean,
Collection receptacle shall contain signage that includes.
okay.
But could that be company-specific, not generally to that pharmacy at location A?
Oh, yeah.
Name
so
and
it
phone
could, like,
number
be
of the
the
collector
Or
pharmacy.
phone number for
I don't think it would be
pharmacy?
corporate. I think I'd see, it says collector pharmacy here.
Yeah,
So
it's-
that's
it's
something
the
the board
store
may want to
location.
decide if it
So I
wants
guess
it.
what you're suggesting is that, like, CVS, it would have CVS's 800 number?
That it could, and that
That
way
would
they
be
could
one
mass
sign?
produce certain signage and make it more
Yeah, because
available.
the address would be, I mean, if I called and I said, the 800 CVS number, I found this bins on First and Second Street, I mean, you'd know, CVS would know which would be responsible for it, right?
But
You'd-
isn't
you'd
someone
have
going to be
records.
monitoring that while it's unlocked and seeing if it's full?
Well, presumably, but you don't know. And for us, it just seems like a real essential component of consumer information, who's responsible for this collection bin.
Okay.
And in a skilled nursing facility, even more so, who's the pharmacy that's responsible, an employee may or may not know. And who knows why they would need to call, but again, It's just disclosure.
Okay, well,
Who's
maybe we can
responsible
follow
for it?
up and see if there's a way to ensure that, we can have sort of uniform signage that is specific to what the DEA regs call for, and then maybe somewhere on the receptacle put that kind of identifying information.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, we'll follow up with comments, because I guess the way our members read this was sort of, we have these mass-produced signs, and then we're gonna have to have
Like somebody
store-specific
write in the
information
phone,
on
yeah.
each one. Okay. All right, so that's helpful clarification. And then also, we were looking to see if the inclusion of sharps and needles would be omitted from that, since, obviously, our pharmacists are going to be, to the best of their ability, advising individuals whether, what types of products or medications can or cannot be included in them, but in the being consistent with sort of the signage and producing uniform signage, most of it will be done in accordance to the DA regs, which I don't think include the
So are
the
you
sharps.
concerned, are you concerned at all? Because there are sharps take back that's actually being proposed.
They're
There's no
separate, yeah.
concern that
Sharps
the patients, because one of the things I've heard from some of the drugstores that are doing is that the patients don't have an option for sharps, so they think that
They
it's
put the
sharps and
sharps
drugs,
in.
and let's just toss them all in there. So I would think that it would be better protection to at least advise the public, this is not a location for you to dispose of sharps. That's why I think the thinking
That's what
behind
we have
that
in there.
was from a safety perspective. Because
Okay.
otherwise the patients would know, the consumers would say, I don't know, I didn't know. I had no idea that I couldn't just throw my sharps in there.
That's
I have
true.
nowhere to put them.
What was the goal? Because there was another place they wanted the sharps to be disposed. I mean, I kind of understand what Amy's saying, but I kind of understand what your point. So do they want like another place to dispose of the sharps? Do they want the sharps handled in a different way?
Well, I think this was sort of just from, from a signage perspective. If these are going to be signs that are sort of mass-produced for collection receptacles that are, also installed in other states, most of the signage would be produced in the manner consistent with the DEA regs. And so then when we have California now prescribing other specifications in there, there would sort of be a different California-specific sign. So that was really the concern, but I understand where you're coming from with that.
Especially as you and I know that LA County was proposing that, to put in sharps take back as well.
Yes.
Well, actually, Angie, I mean, you guys could develop your own policy to collect all the sharps and needles. I mean, you could negotiate with some places, you could have just separate bin for separate stuff. It's even better.
Yeah, and I believe that some
Right?
of our members are
So
doing
you
that
could put
too.
different signage to tell people what things you need to deposit and what receptacle, right?
Okay. Another point I wanted to raise, there's on page 6, I believe. Sorry, let's go in order. This is the portion that says that the collection receptacle cannot be removed or moved. The DA regs say that the collection receptacles must be bolted and cannot be removed. But there may be a time, depending on a pharmacy layout, when we may feel that it's fit to move the collection receptacle, and so we want to make sure that that's clarified. We still do have the ability to do that.
Which section, Andrew, are you
This
referring
is,
to?
F.
On
Well,
page
you
6?
just have to screw it down wherever you put it in the new place, right?
Bolt it to the floor.
As long as
yeah.
it's bolted to the floor, it's
Yeah.
okay, as far as I understand it.
okay.
It
Which
was just
section?
pointing out an inconsistency. You added the extra word, and we were curious if that needed to be in there.
I believe we had the language, that came out of the regs, I believe, that when we did that throughout the section to make it consistent.
What's the section number,
Oh,
Angie, you're
here it
referring
is.
to?
It's section 1776.3, subsection B. So it says that, talks about maintaining the collection receptacle must be fastened to a permanent structure so it cannot be moved or removed. I think for us, we just think the structure, if it has to be fastened to something permanent, then obviously it cannot be moved. But the way that some of our members are interpreting this is, well, if, let's say, the store layout is changing or we find a more appropriate place, we want to be able to unbolt it and move it to another location.
And rebolt it again.
And rebolt it again.
I think that would be, I don't.
You said it's 1776.3E?
Point 3B,
B,
subsection
okay,
B.
okay, got it, all right.
Same thing. I gave up.
Oh, did I
looking for
say?
it.
Oh, here we go.
Subsection B. Just to remove that, the word moved, I think we want to just be able to have the ability to move the receptacles if we see fit. Obviously, reinstalling it and rebolting it if it was to be moved, but we understand that the receptacles must be affixed in some sort of permanent manner.
So the DEA reg, and this is 1317.75 sub E.
Oh, sub B.
Sub 1, be securely fastened to a permanent structure so that it cannot be removed.
Yeah, so
So they're
that's
okay with
fine.
remove, they just want to get rid of the word move.
That makes sense.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And then we also have.
Mary, did you say there was a word that was a typo? Oh, maybe I misunderstood you, sorry.
So also wanted to raise in that same section, in subsection H, there's sort of a concern for the requirement for rigid containers. Now, for the rigid containers, obviously the regulations aren't requiring liners within the receptacle to also be contained in a rigid container, but when the liner is changed to be put in a rigid container?
For transport, right.
Okay, for transport. But if we have a reverse distributor coming to the store, then wouldn't they have that sort of pickup already? I guess what I'm asking is, do we have to have?
put it on the road, the DOT is going to require a rigid liner, is what I
Okay.
understand.
And so the reverse
That isn't our,
distributors
and that's
would
why
have
we
that.
just, in a couple places, we talk about the rigid container, but then we default it back to the Department of Transportation standards.
Okay, all right. Yeah, I think we were just sort of, there was some confusion as to whether, are we going to be requiring the rigid container at all times for the liners and even when we're taking them out? And I think if the reverse distributor is coming to, if they're DEA registered reverse distributors, they would have the rigid containers, correct?
Probably, but keep in mind, once that liner comes out, if the reverse distributor isn't there, they're going to have to store it somewhere for up to 3 days, and that's when you're going to have to stick it in a rigid container of some sort, if nothing else, just to store it for 3 days until the reverse distributor comes and gets it. That's how the reg is set up.
Yeah, it
Okay.
says the liner must immediately, without interruption, be placed in a rigid container for storage, handling, or transport. So you're suggesting that maybe for storage, that transport's okay, but
For storage, and I don't believe that that's something that the DA regulations
Well, part of
require
that-
for the rigid.
No, it doesn't. But-
Okay.
But part of the concern is that if they're pulling this stuff out and just leaving it in a bag, the liners are not necessarily totally impervious to a hole being open or a sharp going in or any number of other things that could end up injuring employees or contaminating the general area of a pharmacy. It's meant to contain what's in that collection bin
Whatever was
until which time it can leave the pharmacy
Picked up.
or the skilled nursing facility.
Okay. And another point that I wanted to raise as well was the records. So I noticed that for when liners are changed out, there's a requirement, I believe, on page 11, subsection 17, 76.6, which requires these records to be maintained for 3 years. The DA regulations don't require any sort of record keeping, so I just wanted to kind of get some context on that.
Pretty much all records of acquisition and disposition in a pharmacy are 3 years. This is part of that. So in the event that there's a problem with the liner somehow disappearing or whatever, and I don't think, is there a 3-year I think there actually might be a 3-year limit somewhere in the DEA regs, but again, that's just consistent with the other records of pharmacy.
Okay. Okay. Well, we will take this feedback to our members, but we definitely will be submitting comments as well.
Yahoo.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mary. And we're going to finish up with this, and then we have been asked to go back to the trust language, because I think there's someone that needs to catch a flight. So we want to make sure we accommodate that as well. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Bill Worrell, San Luis Obispo County Integrated Waste Management Authority. I want to thank you for certainly making vast improvements on the regulations that we saw in January. My list of concerns is actually very small. At least one of them I think you addressed last time, but I'm not sure, so I'm going to bring it up again. It's if you go to the list of regulations, if you even look at draft 1, because they're really not different on page 4, under 1776.1, it's the one about the next to the bottom of 1776.1 about a pharmacy. Shall not provide take-back services to consumers.
I think it's on page 3 of the most recent draft, and it's letter L.
Page 3, yep.
It starts out, the pharmacy shall not provide take-back services to consumers.
Right.
That one? Okay.
Yeah, at the last meeting, you changed it by striking as provided in section 17.4, which really made no change to that. And on the minutes that you approved today from the June meeting, your staff recommendation was changing services to collection receptacle to clearly identify that a pharmacy can still provide mailback envelopes if they cannot provide a receptacle. And I was going to ask that this language be clarified, as staff had recommended at the June meeting, to clarify that a take-back or mailback envelope would be allowed under this section. And other than that, there were 2 other minor changes. I think they've both been addressed already, so I won't bring those up. The bigger concern is that we talk about the DEA regulations. The DEA regulations only apply to kiosks that have controlled substances in them. The day you pass these regulations, probably 95% of the existing kiosks in this state are going to close, because very few of them are registered with the DEA and take controlled substances. So the impact of adopting these regulations is not going to be to expand the program, but to severely limit it. I know in my county, we have 12 kiosks, 4 of them are under the DEA, 8 are not. And you say, well, how can you ensure that those kiosks don't get controlled substances? The DEA, in drafting the regulations, considered that and said, yes, it is allowable to have those. In our case, every pharmacy that has a kiosk that doesn't take DEA controlled substances has a big sign that says non-controlled substances only, which you go, well, how will they know? Plus a list of all the controlled substances, and most importantly, it says, see the pharmacist for a mailback envelope for your controlled substances. So we give the public the option to do the right thing. It's one thing just to say no controlled substances, but if there's no option, what's going to happen? They're going to put them in there. But in our case, we tell them what they are and give them just an easy option to go get it from a pharmacist for that envelope to mail back your controlled substances. Why do the pharmacies like that? Because then they don't have to register with the DEA. It's much easier to have a medical waste hauler then service their bin instead of trying to find a reverse distributor, which are essentially non-existent, or I think there's 2 mailback programs currently in the U.S. for drugs. So by doing what you're doing, instead of expanding this program, you're going to end up severely limiting it. The second comment is one I've made before, which is pharmaceutical waste is regulated under the Health and Safety Code by the Department of Health Services. I think that's probably the appropriate place to have it because it applies to everywhere. As you discussed today, only pharmacies are really affected by these regulations. So if a senior center or if a government building, as there is one in Oakland, wants to have a kiosk that doesn't include controlled substances, neither your regulations nor the DEA regulations would apply to that location. So with that, again, thank you for the opportunity to come and speak to you, and I look forward to your revisions.
Well, so what you're saying is, I'm looking at version 3, here it's K. A pharmacy shall not provide take-back services to consumers if, that's the relevant provision.
I think he's actually referring to L, where it refers to pharmacy shall not provide take-back to consumers.
Thank you.
And it used to have those sections in there. And
I
so
would say a
his
pharmacy.
His concern is that a pharmacist who's on probation should still be able to have mail-back envelopes or packages, whereas now it kind of says a pharmacist on probation can't have a receptacle, mail-back, or packages. Am I paraphrasing you correctly?
Well, really, the one before, I would change it to say a pharmacy shall not provide take-back collection receptacles to consumers if in the professional judgment they don't think they can do it. So I would limit that second from the bottom statement to say it only applies to the collection receptacle. Because if a pharmacy literally isn't large enough for a 2-foot by 2-foot kiosk, makes sense. But what pharmacy can't hand somebody an envelope to say, mail your drugs back? So I would change K to say, and that's what staff recommended in June, to say take back collection receptacle.
I recall that discussion, though, that we were supposed to make that we had asked
We're
to
gonna
make
fix
that
that.
change.
Yeah, because,
So that it's just the receptacles, it's not the envelopes.
exactly.
Well,
So good catch, I think.
I actually think at the last board meeting, there was another conversation about that very issue that went the other direction. I
Oh,
don't
it did?
think-
I
There was
thought
a
so, too.
conversation about it, but there was not board action on
Right,
it.
I agree.
So let's discuss it now. I mean, I think we need to make a decision on this. Do we believe that the PIC professional judgment should be for envelopes and receptacles, or should it just be for receptacles?
You know, Amy, most of the people don't know what's controlled, what's not controlled. They go throw it in there anyway.
Right.
So,
No, I agree with you. I think
Right, so-
we're talking, Albert, about whether we should, on K and L, whether it says a pharmacy shall not provide take-back services to consumer if in the professional judgment of the pharmacist in charge, the pharmacy cannot comply with the provisions of this article or the DEA. I think the point that he's making is that that should not apply to envelopes. It should only apply to hosting a bin, because there's nothing that a PIC could say, I can't do an envelope.
This was discussed at length at the June board meeting, and Stan was one of the major components of it, and his argument was that it should be up to the pharmacist's professional judgment for both.
Right, well, we're here now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I think that it makes sense regarding the kiosk that you have the PIC make a professional determination. However, on the envelopes, I don't see why you'd be doing that.
Victor, Cheryl, any comments?
I don't like the idea of a pharmacist being forced to do any of that, period.
Yeah, I would agree. I like professional judgment.
I agree with Cheryl.
They're forced because they.
And Debbie? Victor, Cheryl, and Debbie?
Remember,
Well,
it says
what if there's no
cannot
good
comply with the
reason?
provisions. It
Oh,
doesn't
the only
say yes or no.
And I would just reemphasize that the reason we're here is public protection. I don't know how we can really say that not giving out envelopes is a public protection issue. That's the hardest part I have with this. I mean, I agree it's an economic decision, and I don't like the fact that pharmacies are being told you have to do this, but I don't see how we can justify that particular section is related to public safety.
Right. I don't either.
So I just caution that we really reevaluate that and see whether that we can actually say that.
Who go provide the envelope?
Anybody can provide an envelope. I mean, really, it doesn't have to be a pharmacy. Anybody could provide an envelope to a patient.
Yeah, but you have regulations that the envelope has to be prepaid. So
That's
who's going
not
to
in
pay?
our regs. That's not in our regs that,
It
that has to
is,
be
it is.
prepaid?
Yeah, it says
It is, it has to be prepaid, yes, it is. It is, it's on the rec.
But,
But it has
but
to be
you-
prepaid.
But anybody can do
has
it.
to be
You
Can they
don't
sell them?
have to.
No. It has to
have to
No
be
one's saying that the
a
pharmacy has to
collector
pay.
or a
It's
DEA
not- there shouldn't
registrant
be-
to give them out.
No.
There's no
It says it
requirement
has to be
about that.
prepaid by somebody else, I think. So Jenny, I'm actually, I want to make sure I'm telling Cheryl the right thing. So when it says
Uh-oh.
prepaid, that means it's not the pharmacist's responsibility to pay for it. That means someone provides the envelopes.
They would sell them to you, and then you would, if you were so inclined, to sell them to the patient.
Okay, so we would have to be responsible for
Yeah.
the cost.
Somebody would, well, only if you give them out, then
Or you
you
sell them to the
absorb the
patient.
cost as a community service. But if you're interested, and if you're not interested in doing that, there's no prohibition against the pharmacy selling them to a patient either. But the
Also-
goal is to make sure that they get put in the mail and there's already the postage paid on it, so it goes to the destination without having it come back to the pharmacy or somewhere else. That's why it's
The
prepaid.
mailroom or somewhere.
I guess my concern is the professional judgment to not do that. I'm not sure how that professional judgment to not hand out an envelope is in the public, has a public safety risk.
Amy, if you're an independent pharmacy located in an area, maybe you only fill 50 prescriptions a day. However, you're in your district that you might have a lot of drug addicts, may have a lot of people in the rough area. They would turn in 50 envelopes for you a day. How are you going to afford that? And you
Again,
say public safety,
now-
then you
now
have to
I-
jeopardize your own business because for public safety, that doesn't make sense. Everyone have to have their own judgment, what they want to do.
Now, Victor, I agree with you from a business perspective and from an operational, but the reason we are here in a public protection role.
True, but
To
you also
protect
have
the
to have
public.
concerns for the pharmacists too.
Well, our board's mission is to protect the public.
I think we have to keep that in mind when we look at this. And what we're saying here, we're not saying that a pharmacy has to do it. There's nothing in here that's saying. It's saying that if I do not want to participate, in my professional judgment, I don't have to hand out envelopes.
That is what it says now, but I think you're
Yeah.
proposing that it says that I can't, that if I don't want to do it, I still have to. Because this is saying that the pharmacist shall not provide the services if in the professional judgment of the pharmacist, the pharmacy should not comply. And so, I mean, I think we should leave it like that because I agree with, public safety, but there's a lot of things that are decisions at the pharmacy, economic or not, whether I want to carry controlled drugs, whether I want to carry brand name drugs, whether I want to do certain things. That's my business decision. That's my, it's a free country. So if we take it, if we say that the pharmacist cannot use professional judgments on the envelopes, then that, we're basically saying that they have to carry
do
the
it, yeah.
envelopes and the packages.
Why are we saying that? Because we're
Because-
saying up above that they may participate. The beginning of this whole reg is you may participate.
Okay, Amy, it says a pharmacist shall not provide take-back services to consumers. And so you're wanting to define take-back services as only the receptacles. If, in the professional judgment of the pharmacist, the pharmacy cannot comply with the provisions of the DEA. So if you're saying the pharmacy shall not provide take-back services, if you change that to shall not provide a receptacle, if in the professional judgment, blah, 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 then you're in effect saying that you have to do the envelopes.
Well, the whole preface
That-
of
that's-
this
that's
whole
actually what
thing.
you want. That's actually what this gentleman's asking for.
I don't.
No, all I'm saying is, I can't imagine how you
let me-
cannot comply with these provisions
don't-
by handing out an envelope.
Yeah, I don't think that is accurate. And I'm going to ask counsel, does that mean if we take that out, does that mean that the pharmacies are going to be required to do envelopes? I thought the whole language of
Well, the
this regulation is that this is permissive.
They would not be required to do it by this law, by this regulation, no.
Amy?
But what's the
Amy,
purpose of the?
but all those drugs that in the receptacle will be destroyed anyway, right? So why we need to separate the control and not control?
No, and I don't think, what we're talking about now is the whole issue about
Well,
whether.
I mean, you have the envelope to
Yeah.
return the control.
Yes.
So my question is, why you need to separate them? If you dump it in there, in the receptacle, you got nobody go open. I mean, they supposed to seal and then without tamper with it and take it to destroy. So why we need to separate them? That's what my question.
No, I don't think we are separating it.
So why you need the envelope to return the control drug?
It's just an option. You can either have a receptacle to return everything, or you can have an envelope to return everything.
Oh, just the envelope alone without the
Right.
receptacle.
Right.
That's what you say.
It's a
Right.
choice.
This is a receptacle.
I see.
And again, the only thing I'm iterating is that I believe that we have a public safety, is to host a kiosk, I agree could have some public safety implications for some pharmacies. There could be an issue why they don't want to do it. I don't know if there's a public safety link to having to hand out an envelope. That's the only, and I understand there's business issues, but from a professional PIC, I'm not sure it's our role as a public protection board.
So I guess,
to
so you
include
and
that
I
in
going
there.
back, so I don't understand, if you make K only apply to receptacles, and yet you're saying that the pharmacist can still refuse to do the envelope, I don't really understand what we're doing with K.
We're saying that
Say that,
if, in the professional judgment of pharmacists, there could be some safety problem with the kiosk, and they can say, I judge there's a safety problem, we can't have one. But can't think of a reason why there'd be a safety problem with an envelope.
so I guess I'm trying to understand the situation where that would happen. So are we talking about a county that would come and say, you have to have a take-back service?
Well, they say one or the other, and some of them say, okay, we'll do the envelopes. Is that correct?
Well, no,
Right.
they're doing controlled, non-controlled, so that's kind of a different
No,
situation.
no, no. We've got 47 pharmacies, and 35 are handing out envelopes only. They've chosen, you could either do kiosks or envelopes, so 35 of them have chosen just to hand out envelopes to the public.
But in your case, the envelope is provided to them for free, isn't it? The envelope you
They
provide to
provide
them
them to the public for free.
for free. But in our case, we have to pay for the envelope.
That's different, yes.
That's a big difference.
You have a choice.
Yeah.
So you will have a lot less participation when you have to make them pay something for it.
You know, I know, can we take the money part of it out? I mean, I think it comes down to, is there a professional judgment? In K, do we want to have two different rules for professional judgment around take-back services? Do we want to have one rule that for a receptacle, professional judgment applies, but for envelopes and packages, professional judgment, that the pharmacist's professional judgment does not apply, that
So
can't
tell
come
me,
in?
in what professional, give me an example of a situation where giving out an envelope would harm public safety.
We are talking about the whole take-back program is optional to the pharmacist. That's all.
But that's already in there.
You can't say, what has this to do with public safety? You could do a lot of things for public safety at the expense of the profession.
But
and
Victor, we've
professionals, too.
already said that. We've
Yes,
had
and we
so
did.
many discussions about permissive
About
language and
It
voluntary.
is optional. It is
and
optional.
The board has said that's permissive, and our attorneys have said that all of this is permissive. There's nothing in our languages that is forcing anyone
But
to
if
do
you
anything.
if you mandate that if they don't do the receptacle, they have to do the mailback service, then you mandate them to do something.
We're not mandating
You're
that.
saying
We're
that.
just saying that the jurisdictions can do that if they choose, if they vote to do it. We're not deciding that here.
But I think we have to leave up to the pharmacists in charge to decide what they want to do. That's all. It's all personal. You can't mandate everybody to do everything.
I'm just curious what Brian has to say.
Thank you. Brian Warren with the California Pharmacists Association. I think this is a situation where perhaps some of those business decisions could end up having an impact on public safety because it is a cost issue. The secure envelopes for mailing back controlled substances cost at least $5 a piece. Many pharmacies are dispensing drugs that the retail cost is less than $5. The spread between the ingredient cost and what the pharmacy gets paid, or the profit that they make off of it, is significantly less than $5. So being forced to hand these out means pharmacies lose money, and that may harm their ability to actually be able to acquire the correct types of envelopes. They may not be able to afford to provide the types of envelopes that the DEA regulations require, which is why a pharmacy may not be able to do so. And I think these regulations themselves acknowledge that responsibilities involved in handing out envelopes, in the sense that there's an entire section dedicated to what you have to do when you're handing out envelopes. So it's not just a simple same thing as selling bubble gum. These are serious things that have to be tracked. There is serialization, tracking, and all these logs required. And there's a cost, and some of it is, it's not I understand, Dr. Gutierrez, what you're saying, but I think that this is a situation where the business impact could have an impact on the public safety.
Well, we have a county where it's been in place for how long now?
Over a year, just about.
Has anybody gone out of business because of this?
No.
No, but
but
they're
the
being
point- the
provided the
point-
envelopes
The
at no
county one's
charge.
free.
Right.
The
That's
county
what
one's free.
No, the pharmacies had to pay.
No, but free, Ramon, it's not apples to
Alameda
apples.
County one is free, right, according to him, right?
No, he's
Yep.
San Luis Obispo.
Oh, but is it free? I mean,
Right.
the pharmacy don't have to pay for the envelope, right?
No, pharmacies pay for them.
The pharmacy pay for the envelope, how much they have to pay for the envelope?
They're about $4.50 each.
You know, I don't make $4.50 each prescription. And that's the honest truth. A lot of prescription, I feel I lost money. So you tell me you think I got pick up this envelope and pay for it and then pass it out?
They don't
I
hand
will
them
not
out with every
participate.
prescription.
Yeah.
So I think the other part of it is in San Luis Obispo is that, as Brian has pointed out, there's not the tracking system either. That they're not, I mean, I don't think there's that system
Yeah.
in place.
They're Sharps compliance envelopes, and they get sent back to Sharps compliance with the number on them, and they follow the DEA regs and all that.
Does the DEA require all the tracking?
On the envelopes?
There's a unique number on the envelopes, but
7.
So it's a different, less onerous.
But I truly believe that what we're doing, there's nothing in our regs are requiring anybody to do any of this. This is all permissive. What we're doing is we're basically putting things in place to address counties that have decided to make this mandatory. That's what this is all about. And that's my concern. I don't know if we can really, I can't stand on the fact that this is public protection. I understand it's an economic impact. I really do believe that it's really awful that you're charging $4.50 for these bags to go out. Well, I mean, that's the cost of doing that business, and I agree that there isn't $4.50 to make on a prescription. However, I'm not sure that that's under the jurisdiction of this board, whose role is to protect the public. That is my only point on this.
I hear that, and also, we went offline, so I can't look this up, but, what's a professional judgment about? I thought a professional judgment was about safety and doing pharmacy correctly and making sure that people's prescriptions are filled as they should be, counseling and so forth. I don't know that it has to do with, making sure that the drugstore makes as much money as possible.
Well, we'd be happy to do it if somebody pay for it, but if we have to pay for it, that's not workable.
Right, but my understanding professional judgment has to do with proper provision of services.
I don't know, it looks like, Amy, we might have other people, so
Yes.
maybe we have these guys.
Any other public comment?
Hi, good afternoon. Angie Minetti with the California Retailers Association. Wanted to speak to the issue of the envelopes as well. I understand and, granted, considering many of our members are opting to do mail back in San Luis Obispo County, obviously the method of collection by envelope is something much simpler. There still is some tracking required by the DA regs, but it significantly reduces the liability concerns from our members' perspective. Some of the issues that I did want to raise, though, as far as maintaining and preserving the PIC's discretion to determine if they should have mailback or not, is you never know what kind of frequency the envelopes must be distributed by. Is it upon request? Is it every transaction you give out an envelope? Is it offering it as it is in San Luis Obispo? You offer it with every transaction. And so without sort of an extensive education plan accompanying that, you do have many envelopes wasted. Consumers aren't aware of that. And in addition, it's also in the same sentence where your pharmacist could have finished a consultation with you, talked about med adherence, and then now is also offering you an envelope just in case you have any left over. So I think that considering that, we don't know what kind of frequency envelopes would be required at the county level or at the state level. We want to ensure that at least if we are in a county that requires it upon every transaction, the PIC can use their discretion and professional judgment to say, well, maybe that's really not an appropriate way to do this. I think many of our members would appreciate something along the lines as far as upon request, if, within the realm of mail back envelopes is concerned. But, there are still many other factors as well. I mean, even to participate in a program like that, we still do need to change our collector status per the DEA regs. Although we're not receiving back envelopes that are filled and they have to be sent out to pre-addressed reverse distribution locations, we still do have to modify that status. And so that sort of raises the pharmacies at a different sort of level of oversight as well. So I just wanted to raise those issues as well, which is why we support the language and we support the staff changes that were adopted from the last hearing.
Well, on San Luis Obispo, and I know you're never supposed to ask questions you don't know the answer to, but I ask you anyway. I thought that it was once a month to regular customers. It's not like just come one, come all, take these expensive envelopes. What's your understanding?
No, I think it is.
It is.
And I think they even have penalties on there, including what I had heard, criminal penalties if they don't participate.
It is capped, so for customers, it is capped at once a month.
Once a month, see.
But it's difficult to track that customer to see if that customer is received their envelope before. There isn't that type of extensive tracking that's being done. So if somebody came in in July and we gave them an envelope and then they happen to come in again, there's no way for us to sort of track that unless we do it based off of the last prescription that was filled. But I think at this point, most of the time we do have to offer them at least per transaction, and then you're limited. So let's say someone says, well, can I have an envelope? We still have to offer it, but then we check if that person had come into the pharmacy within the past month.
So there's a once a month rule.
Angie, I just have a question for you, because I think a light just kind of went on while you were speaking. And it seems to me what you're saying, professional judgment, is kind of on a case-by-case basis. So maybe like in a San Luis Obispo situation, you're saying that Steve Gray comes in on Monday. I give him, an envelope. Yeah. And so you're saying you want to give that pharmacist the professional judgment that when he comes in 2 weeks, I'm pretty sure I gave it to you. I don't really think you need it, so I'm going to have the judgment that I don't need to give it to you this time. I mean, so it's not like across the board. I mean, I suppose the pharmacist could say I'm never going to have them, but it also, you're kind of saying it's also could be used on a case-by-case basis to make sure that scarce resources are maybe spread appropriately.
Well,
and I mean, isn't that kind of part of what this is too?
Well, I don't know if we can do it at that level of a case-by-case basis. I think that would be a lot harder to just comply with. But
I mean, we do it every day when we're handing out prescriptions and we're deciding on, am I going to give this guy his controlled drug, corresponding responsibility? Are there, flags going on? It's not that there's red flags on these envelopes, but I think that they're, maybe I can make a decision on a case-by-case basis whether it seems like a reasonable decision.
And I think that's what we're trying to push for as far as making that decision on a case-by-case basis, depending on what kind of local ordinances we could potentially be subject to. Giving that discretion to the PIC so that if we happen to be in a county that has, a little bit more of a cost-sensitive structure for their mail back, then that may be something that our members would be willing to consider and say, yeah, there's no problem in us participating in this type of a mail back program. But then, for some counties that, right now, San Luis Obispo is sort of the center of attention here, but it is a little bit challenging when you're subject to that type of frequency and not knowing the other kinds of frequencies or what frequencies could be replicated in respect to mailback raises concern. And so I think as far as a case-by-case basis, maintaining that discretion would be valuable.
Amy, I don't like the idea of mailback on controlled substance. That means we are trusting the post office with the package. And I don't like the safety of that at all. Because you know what happened when you fly the airplane, you know what happened to your luggage. They know which ones have what is inside. So when you have a specific package, you know it's controlled substance in there. I got to trust all the people who work in the post office not to touching those things and take all those things, and especially those people abuse the drug. So I don't like the idea at all.
I think the fact that you're saying that there are some counties that are requiring this, and it has to be, do they have to give it to every single patient?
You have to offer it.
So even if I'm taking something that I know has a 10-day course and I need to take the whole thing, I'm still having to be given an envelope or offered an envelope?
Offered an envelope, yes.
But as a practical matter, that's not happening.
Yeah, but I can see that actually
that's an issue.
that does have an issue for.
Well, how
if
are all
we're
the
trying to-
drugstores in San Luis Obispo County staying open then?
Well, because we're trying to promote adherence and appropriate therapy, and here I am telling you to take your 10 days therapy, and then I'm going to give you an envelope and tell you, here, in case you don't, here you go,
Right,
throw it
but-
out.
But as a practical matter, they've been doing this in this county for a year. The drugstores are all still open. So somehow it didn't work out that they all went bankrupt with these envelopes. So I think there's some
No, it's
common
not- it's not a-
sense that could
it's
be
not a
brought into
bankrupt-
play.
Ramon, I'm not talking about a bankrupt
Neutral site.
situation. I'm really trying to find the patient safety reason
Right. I think
for
there's
this.
another way to go. I think that it seems to me, from what I've heard, the pharmacy doesn't make a lot of money per prescription. The one who's making the money on the drugs is the manufacturer. So it seems to me if they could have the manufacturer pay for the envelopes, that would take care of the issue.
I think there's a group working to do that, but
Well, that's
that's
the
not
rule
part
in
of this
Alameda
board's
County.
There's
concern.
initiatives for that already,
Yeah.
but I don't think, the finances of all this should not come into, should
I
not be part of the
understand that,
reason we're
but-
doing
Hey,
things.
You have to- there's a
Great
practical
doesn't
way to
work
look
that
at it,
way.
too.
Whatever the manufacturer pay is still coming out the consumer's pocket. They get it back somewhere.
Well,
Understand that.
back to the matter at hand.
Maybe Martin Shkreli's company could have a little, have a little extra
A little
built into
busy
their
right now.
price in order to pay for it.
Find a way to recycle it.
I think, if I have it correctly from the latest version, I think part of the confusion here is in the minds of some of the people in the audience. What are you trying to do? Are you trying to say that this PIC can say no to the county, or could this PIC can say no to the employer? What are you saying?
Not to the employer.
Well, that has been discussed before. There was a
It
concern
says a
that
pharmacy, not a pharmacist.
No, I think he's talking about the PIC.
the PIC.
Using judgment, saying I can't do it.
Right.
Okay.
Because employer may decide that I want every one of my pharmacies to be a good public citizen and give these out, whether they have to absorb the cost, whether they have to charge, or whether they or participate in Alameda County and most of the other counties that have a stewardship councils being set up to collect the money from the producers, which are the manufacturers. We would object at Kaiser Permanente to anything that we, if we decide that this is an important public benefit, both environmentally and for patient safety, we don't want our PICs to say, no, I don't want to do this. And if that's what you mean, then we would object to that provision in there. If you're saying that this PIC option to opt out or to say I'm not ready is really directed at the counties or the cities, then you need to make it clear. When we read this language, it talks about take back. An envelope is not a take back. An envelope is a mail away. I'm not taking anything back, except, currently, we're charging for it. We look forward to the day when we don't have to charge for it, one way or the other. And so we're supporting these EPR, Environmental Producer Responsibility ordinances, that would spread this cost across the entire public for this. So if you're using take-back in your regulation and you mean both envelopes and receptacles, I think that needs to be clarified. Because we do say that there are certain situations, and you've said it yourself, pharmacies on probation or otherwise, that shouldn't be required to have receptacles if it's dangerous or a public danger. So I think you really need to clarify. So employers should have the right to say to all of their PICs, to all of their employees, this is something that is part of our business decision, and you are going to hand out envelopes or sell envelopes, whatever the situation is in your pharmacies.
That's a very interesting point. Steve, while you're there, could I ask what a professional judgment is involving? I mean,
I got the definition from the
all right.
Royal Pharmaceutical Society.
Well, we could test him and see if he knows the answer.
Is that
all right.
England?
This is, I believe this is England.
Not just King Pharmacies.
Says professional judgment could be described as the use of accumulated knowledge and experience in order to make an informed decision. It takes into account the law, ethical considerations, and all other relevant factors related to the surrounding circumstances.
But are you quoting the dictionary?
No, it's from a pharmacy, the Pharmaceutical Journal.
In England.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, then I can still ask Steve what he thinks it means in the United States.
That's exactly what I was going to say.
Oh.
And I'm serious. There's no way you can sum it up in one or two words. It's a judgment based on your accumulated knowledge. And the professional judgment that I have is, over 40-some years in pharmacy. Someone who just graduated last year, I wouldn't expect to probably come to the same conclusion about a lot of things.
Are you advocating we eliminate this PIC language?
When we read it and it said take back was up to the PIC professional judgment, that might not be what we preferred, but we did not think it included envelopes. It does not include, in other words, but if you want to, if some of the people here who are saying, wait a minute, the whole idea of this PIC language was to get around county ordinances and city ordinances that were going to mandate it, then that's a different purpose. So I think that it needs to be definitely clarified as to what are you going after. We would not want to have to fire some PIC because he refused to give out envelopes that we were providing for free.
Thank you.
I just wanted to finish up my comments quickly. I just want to clarify, our members are engaged in various take-back services and are happy to do so, are happy to provide them within, each member's, I guess, realm of comfortability. And wanted to speak to this take-back services. I think, many of our folks have sort of a context by which they feel comfortable providing a receptacle, providing mail-back services, and also providing take-back events, which we didn't talk about here, or which hasn't been discussed here either. And part of that is because, when we participate in the DA's national drug take-back events, many of our members volunteer to do that and offer pharmacy staff to the event as well, connect with the community, but it's because there also is law enforcement provided to monitor and help assist in running the events as well. And so I think from our perspective, not knowing what could potentially be adopted as far as different types of mandates on receptacles or different types of frequencies for mail-back, or maybe drug take-back events without law enforcement present, we want to make sure that at least we have a little bit of room to be able to advocate on what the terms would be for a pharmacy's level of comfortability to provide this public service. So just wanted to leave that.
But I really think, Angie, your issue is with whoever is requiring this. That's not this board. There's nothing in our regs that mandate this. So the issue that you have, and I'm saying you in terms of the pharmacy industry, is in those that are making this as a requirement, and that's not here.
Absolutely.
So, Amy, do you want to see if someone has a motion?
Have a motion?
We've talked to, no, I don't think there should be any change.
Okay.
But I'm just wondering if someone has a motion, because I think we've spent probably an
I know
hour.
we have. I'm wondering, maybe, should we take out I? Or is that I?
Which one is I?
And just leave the take-back services for the pharmacy on probation with the board and leave the services in there? I'm sorry, Kay, I
Okay.
can't read this, okay? The one that says, "A pharmacy shall not provide take-back services to consumers if in the professional judgment, the pharmacy cannot comply with the provisions of this article." Because, you know, what Steve said is right, we're not going to say, oh, this only applies to counties.
So I think if you, I mean, I would be against that, but I think if you want to, if that's what your idea
No,
is, I think you should.
opening this up for discussion. I don't put words in my mouth. I'm
Okay.
not making a motion. I'm opening that up for discussion and getting everyone's thoughts. What do you guys think about that?
I don't know, I think we've talked about it for about an hour
Well,
and a half.
I think Steve made a
First
really
time I
good
said
point.
this.
I think Steve
This
made
is
a
the
really
first
good
time I've
point.
mentioned that, about removing that whole section.
I think Steve made a really good point in that take-back and handing out envelopes aren't the same thing anyway. But we did have one other thing. We were going to get around to wrapping this up. You had made one other change that going from pharmacy, the whole hospital discussion, to registrant.
Yeah.
That was the other thing we were going to do.
So,
I
to
think
your
Brian-
point, Kay, I don't think I would like to take that out because that is the professional judgment around the receptacles also, and I think that, you know, I think that, you know, we've had a lot of discussion on that. I think that the board is pretty comfortable with receptacles. So
Brian?
Yeah, we would agree with what Dr. Veal just said. I mean, just because a large pharmacy corporation made a determination that their pharmacies should be handing out envelope, or hosting receptacles or doing any, you know, whether it's something benevolent like that or something like we think every pharmacy should be dispensing 700 prescriptions a day. We think that it's important that pharmacists in charge be able to make the determinations about what goes on within the operations of their pharmacy. It's their license on the line, it's their profession on the line, and they need to be able to exercise that professional
Do they
judgment.
currently have ability to define whether they can fill 700 prescriptions a day?
I think that a pharmacist in charge, if they felt that they were being pushed to fill more prescriptions a day than they safely could, definitely has the ability to say, you know, it's their license on the line. They should be the one that says, we need to, that's not how we're going to operate.
Okay.
I agree with that.
Okay, so we ready to move, you're going to make a motion just to approve this as, I think we did make a few changes, which is at the beginning, I think we had said put a slash in between and/or mailbacks, envelopes, or packages.
Yeah.
On page 1.
Yeah, on page 1.
And on page 2, add Schedule 5.
Yes.
To all of the signage.
Yes.
Yes.
And then pharmacy or registrant, that's what you were going to do?
Yeah,
That's
pharmacy
on-
or registrant. Anything else that we've,
That's on page 5.
anything else we've talked about that we need to
And then
make a
on
change
page 9 is the Schedule 5 again.
on? Okay.
I have that we were removing, it cannot be moved or, we were
Oh, yes,
removing
that's
moved
right.
or.
So on page 5, B.
Move.
Remove, move.
Yeah, and every place where it says moved or removed, we're going to take out moved.
Got it.
Okay. Anything else? Otherwise,
I have
make a
one
motion?
little one.
I'm sorry.
Let me find it again. I lost it. I made a note of it. It's one of the, I think it was in the signage provision. Oh, I'm sorry. I skipped over. I'm like, where are my notes? I was skipping.
You're on 1776.1E, which is a signage provision.
So number 3, we were adding Schedule 5.
It's just a word choice issue that I didn't catch when we used it. In E1, the name and phone number of the collector pharmacy, I don't think we use collector pharmacy everywhere. I think we might have used responsible pharmacy, or perhaps
it should be
pharmacy
responsible.
maintaining the receptacle.
Responsible pharmacy?
Responsible pharmacy.
Responsible,
Yeah, good
okay.
catch. We missed that one.
And on 2, Laura, do you think the language there is a little, it says the collection receptacle shall contain signage that includes no medical sharps and needles. I mean, I'm just thinking, does that read right?
Medical sharps and needles
Should
shall not be deposited.
Yeah, something like that. Just
What was it?
the fact, just
Yeah,
the.
but what was it changed, though?
What did you say, Laura?
Medical sharps and needles shall not be deposited.
Yeah.
All right, you want me to go through, make a motion and go through all
So
the
when we
items?
make all
Okay.
this
I think Victor was going to.
amendment, do we need to go another 15 days?
Absolutely.
Public comment
We're
before
hoping
it?
that this is the final one.
We've already
Why don't you
made
make-
changes to this, Victor, that hasn't been opened yet
Okay,
for
that's
comment.
fine. Yeah, I'd like to make the motion that we would adopt all these amended changes and move forward.
And I
It
second
might
it.
not be a perfect piece, but at least we have something with a background to move forward rather than keep just beating around the bush.
Thanks,
Move on.
Vic. I think there was a second from Cheryl
I second.
already.
And I apologize for this, for going back to it, but on the employee issue, did you highlight that change, or we
Yes,
discussed
we
that
say
change?
That's on page
Yes.
5.
Pharmacy or
Page
registrant
5,
employee.
and then
Yeah,
also in
pharmacy or
that,
registrant.
Yes.
We say it's
in
a
that
registrant.
same subdivision B, I think there was also a desire to break out the hospital pharmacy and say, except as provided in subdivision C, the
Yeah, in that- in
receptacle
subdivision-
must be visible to pharmacy or DEA registrant employees.
Yeah, that's in
Yes.
subdivision B, yeah.
Correct, okay.
Thank you for remembering that, Laura.
That
That's
one I
right.
forgot.
Yeah, she wasn't listening.
Oh, no, I had written it in.
Are you okay with that amendment, Victor?
Yes.
Cheryl? Yes. Okay, any other public comment before we take a vote? Okay, all in favor, raise
One-
your...
There was a
Oh,
comment.
There is?
Yeah, Thomas had a,
I can't hear, I'm sorry, I couldn't hear your
you
question.
need to come up, nobody on TV can hear either.
Thomas Harris, City of Santa Rosa staff. Minor comment, page 7, 1776.4A. It says the pharmacy may allow skilled nursing facility employees to distribute mailback envelopes or packages to consumers. The pharmacy shall require skilled nursing facility employees to keep records, etc. And it's just not my understanding that that's...
That is because in a skilled nursing facility, we have staff that would otherwise potentially take the drugs from the patients and take them home themselves. This provides an accountability to prevent that from happening.
I just wanted to note that's new from the DEA.
That is different from the DEA. That's a concern that we have with drug diversion from facilities. It's a big deal.
Especially when the pharmacy is responsible for those.
So what this motion is still optional? The receptacle and the envelope is
Yes,
optional?
yes, it is.
May,
Yeah.
yes.
So
Good idea.
the motion would make all of the staff recommended changes except as we just discussed, and that language will be edited and noticed for a 15-day notice modified.
So we're still going to review it again, Albert, once we get the public comments back.
As soon as you get a negative comment, it has to come back to the board, and I think it's seems like that would be likely. So not even going to recommend you add the language about the no negative comments.
We don't need to add the executive officer.
I don't think you need to delegate it at this point, yeah.
Okay. All right, we have a motion, we have a second. All in favor, raise your hand.